Now, last week we were talking about the Retro ROM Challenge and some of the frustrations I had in acquiring games legally that were no longer in print, namely games like Snatcher and a few others that sell for hundreds of dollars, yet there is no way to legally acquire the game now. And we had a great discussion. You can go back to last week's video to follow up on that. I'll give you some more thoughts on it in a second. But I did get this great comment on the Facebook page or Facebook group from Commodore about a service called Itch.io that is a clearinghouse for indie games. And there are a bunch of Sega Genesis and other retro ROMs kind of peppered about this site. They've got a lot of games up there. And I did a search for Genesis and Mega Drive, and I found this one here called Irina Genesis Metal Fury. This is something that I think some of you have probably seen out there already. They have a game in development. They're essentially crowdfunding this one, but they have a demo out right now. So I threw them a couple of bucks, and I downloaded the demo from itch.io, and I put it on my Mega SD on my original Sega Genesis here. And I think it might be fun now to take out the controller and give this game a shot. So let's take a look and see what it's all about. All right, so here we've got the game now running on original hardware. Let's get the game started here and see what it's all about. It's got some pretty cool artwork here, as you can see. I think it doesn't support the 6-button controller because I did have to hit the mode button here for this game to work with my 6-button. Let's get the game loaded up here. We got a little tutorial here to show you how to do everything. Definitely looks period accurate. This is the kind of stuff that you would see back in those days here. So let's get to the prototype stage 3. It says good luck, and we'll see how the game handles here. Looks pretty good, actually. I like the multi-level parallax on this. And this is kind of cool, just the fact that we've got, you know, some games like this being developed independently for the old hardware. You can run it on an emulator, but you could also boot it up on original hardware like we're doing here. And it looks pretty cool, so pretty neat stuff. You can find it on that Itch.io site at the link that you see on screen here, and give it a shot for yourself and maybe throw them a couple of bucks to encourage development. I don't think it's going to be a huge market for this retro stuff. It's stuff that I think appeals to people that are really into it like I am, but nonetheless, there's a market for it, and it's good to see there's a marketplace for it as well. And one of the cool things that I've been playing with, and I did a video on this around the holiday season, is this thing called the Retro Tank 2X. And I bought some cables from HD Retrovision that bring RGB video out of the Sega Genesis. I didn't have to do any modifications to it. And this will take that video and give you 480p out of the HDMI with zero lag. And it works great. And you can then rely upon your TV's own upscaler to make everything look accurate. And I found that on my 4K TV upstairs, this Sega Genesis almost looks as good, as my Mega SD, or SG, from Analog, which is a true 1080p FPGA replication of the original hardware. This is almost as good, and I think if you are interested in maybe playing some of your old games on your modern TVs, this might be a really good solution. It works with composite video and S-video as well, but the best images, of course, come out of the component cables. I also wanted to just do a quick update on our Retro ROM Challenge topic from last week because we had a lot of great discussion on that. The consensus generally is that this probably wouldn't work given the complexity of the licensing, because it's hard enough to get the license in the first place to sell the game, but it's even more difficult for some of the games that might have licenses that they used in making the game. So for example, if a logo appeared somewhere and that license isn't valid for a 2019 sale of that ROM, then you'd have to have somebody go in and reprogram the ROM to strip that logo out, for example. There's just a lot of stuff that you may not think about that could really make this a lot more complicated. Music rights are another good one to lump into that category. So I did hear back from a number of you who said you'd love to help with such a project, and a lot of you had a really good background in software and web development. That was awesome. But we did not hear from a lawyer at all, and a lawyer is really what we would need to make this thing work. So I think our better option here, short of getting a lawyer willing to work for little or no pay on this, is to maybe go out to GOG and a few other sites that do have relationships and are selling some of these used titles or these older titles, to maybe encourage them to start looking in the direction of older console games that they might be able to acquire licenses for. GOG really shocked the world with their DOS marketplace. That was such a great thing. It still is, but clearly it's not enough to sustain their business, which is why they're also leveraging themselves as kind of like a Steam competitor and selling a lot of new titles and focusing on that. but they might have relationships that maybe they could use to get some of these games to a point where we could acquire them legally. My advice to you is that if there is a game that you're playing quite a bit and you don't own a copy, go out and buy a modern iteration of it in some way. If it's buying one of those mini consoles, do it. If it's buying a game online, do it if it's available. Unfortunately, though, a lot of games just don't fall into the category where there's any way for the original rights holders to get compensated for that IP. And for those games, you'll have to use your best judgment on that.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters, the Four Guys with Quarters podcast, Chris Allegretta, Tom Albrecht, Mike Talbert, Brian Parker, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.